Hey there, Danielle Matthews here. I am coming to you live from Florida. Today is Monday, so it is book club day. Every single week, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, we jump on, and right now, we're doing The Power of Now. And we're coming to the end of our book. This is our second run through book club. We've done Wayne Dyer's The Power of Intention. This is Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Likely for the holidays, I will take a little bit of a break, and then in the new year, we're going to have a new book. And so I'll be putting out some information to get feedback on what you'd like to do, but very likely I'm thinking a Mickey Singer book. I absolutely love his work. He is just, Temple of the Universe is like an hour from where I live or so, and I absolutely love what he does. So if you're new to my content, you're new to all of this, I help entrepreneurs master their inner dimensions. I help people that are professionals master their inner worlds, people that are dealing with unregulated nervous systems. They have anxiety, their mind is taking control, they're not sure how to handle obstacles. This is what I help people get through, and I absolutely love doing it. So I have a program called Inner Management Mastery. I will be just wrapping up the first go with it. We had an amazing 26 students. Some of them are on here now, and we'll be launching another one in January, and really excited about all of that. So for today, though, is all about the power of now. It is all about this incredible book by Eckhart Tolle, and I'm so grateful to the woman that recommended it to me. She basically said to me, if there's one book you can read in your life, Danielle, this is the book. And I would have to agree. It is a very powerful look at the truths that we need to know in order to live a life filled with inner peace and understanding of the truth of who we are and who we're not, right? How to get out of the mind and get into the moment. So this chapter, we're on the last chapter, chapter 10, and it's all about surrender. And it makes sense that this would be the last chapter because this is the last piece. So for those of you that are joining me on book club, let me know when you're here. I see you, Angela. Hey. And Charlotte. Hey. Let me know when you arrive. This conversation, I think, is going to be a really good one. And crazy enough, next week will be our last week because we'll finish out the book next week. So this week, as we dive in, talking about surrender, and I think this is an interesting topic because most of the time, like spiritual teachings, people say, well, I don't understand how I can surrender and accept what is in the moment. Like, are you telling me to accept things that are like, hurtful? Like, what about violence? What about, situations where someone's controlling me or taking advantage of me? Like, how can I surrender to that? And there is nuance in, a lot of people misunderstand what is meant by surrender. And that's what this chapter was really all about. So I love how he does this book and how he's laid it out with like common questions people have, and then he kind of goes deeper into what's meant. So the first question he started off the chapter with was this person saying, you talk about surrender all the time. If we always accept the way things are, we're not going to make any effort to improve them, right? If I'm just like, oh, this is how it is, okay. Oh, this is just how it is, okay. The point this person is saying is like, look, we'd still be living in caves. Like, we would have had no personal development. There would have been no moving forward of humanity if we just accept what is. And this is like a common misunderstanding. I mean, put a 1 in the chat if, like, when you've heard about this concept of surrender, you're like, okay, but I don't understand how I can just kind of go through life accepting all of the way it is and just being fine with that, right? This is not what it's about. What he says is that true surrender is something entirely different. It does not mean to passively just put up with whatever the situation you find yourself in and do nothing. It also doesn't mean to stop making plans for your future. Surrender is the simple but profound wisdom of yielding rather than opposing the flow of life. So basically saying, okay, this is what has arrived. This is what's in front of me right now, and I'm not going to oppose it. I'm just going to say, it is what it is. Not, I condone it, I agree with it, it's okay, this is what's best for me. None of that. It just means when you accept what is, when you surrender to the moment, you're out of your mind, because your ego mind just like loves conflict. Okay, and it gets its existence, it knows its existence through the medium of, well, disagreeing with people, thinking things ought to be a different way, having an opinion about how something should have been, why it's not this way, how somebody showed up, judging them. Like, this is where the ego gets its life. And so in every moment, the most common problem that all of us have is we're resisting what is, because the mind is resisting what is. It's giving actually like a lot of fire to the ego. And what surrender says, just yield to it. Just say, okay, it is what it is. My opinion about it doesn't matter. My opinion about it doesn't change the fact that it's here, right? If you go get your car stuck in mud, like, he's not saying, oh, just surrender, I'm going to be stuck in mud for the rest of my life. He's just saying, like, accept that it is. Accept that you're stuck in mud. You could be ticked off, you could be angry, you could blame your kid for driving the car into the mud. Like, all of these things you could do, but that's going to cause conflict within. It's going to just fuel your ego, which fuels discontent, which fuels dis-ease in the body, which fuels stress, which fuels all sorts of problems. You know, your nervous system gets all crazy. And that's what we don't want. He says what we want is to just surrender, to go, okay, we're stuck in the mud. I don't condone it. I don't agree with it. I don't want to be here. We're just stuck in the mud right now. So now what can you do? It's like, once you accept the situation, once you surrender to what is, now you can get clarity of action on how to act versus react, right? How to respond versus just to go like nutty. Is this making sense? High five me, put a 5 in the chat if that's making sense to you. Because this is really like, this is the sticking point on this teaching. And this is where a lot of people, like I saw this meme in one of the groups that Eckhart Tolle or some fan has made of Eckhart Tolle's work on Facebook. And it was like this guy hanging from a tree branch, and like an alligator was under him, and like something was crawling to his hands, but then down at the ground, because he was like over water. On the ground, there was some other predator coming for him, and they were like, you know, yeah, sure, just accept what is. Yeah, surrender to the moment. Yeah, that's really going to work out for you, right? Like someone that just clearly didn't understand the teaching. The teaching being, okay, if you find yourself in this peril, if you're reacting from the mind, oh my God, I'm going to die. Oh my God, look at this. Oh my God, this shouldn't be. Oh my gosh, what's happening? Oh my God, I can't believe I got myself in this situation. Like, you're not going to be able to have the clarity to know how to act. You're going to be reactive. All right. And so the person with the meme, like they got the whole thing all wrong. And I was not about to like comment like, okay, come here, you don't understand. But I was laughing at, like, this is how human beings typically, how we take this teaching and we're like, yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, it's not applicable. Like, you can't actually live life in this way. And the truth is, yes, you can, right? I'm glad. Hey, David. Hey, Karen. It's good to see the high fives. So I'm glad you're getting it, because it's like, no, just accept that I'm in this perilous situation, accept that you're in mud, and now figure out, all right, how can I act? What can I do? What movements can I make? Right? And then when you're in a calmer state, you're connected in with the divine. You're in your being, and then you have access to everything, which will flow to you, right? So he says surrender is a purely inner phenomenon. It does not mean that on the outer level you cannot take action or change the situation. In fact, it is not the overall situation that you need to accept when you surrender, but just the tiny segment called the now. You just have to surrender to now. He says surrender is not resignation. You're not just resigning yourself to being stuck in the mud. Oh, I'm just going to be here for life, right? Like, that's not what we're talking about. He says resignation isn't surrender at all. It's just saying, okay, I'm going to release my resistance to the moment. I'm going to release the fact that I'm ticked off that my kid got me stuck in mud. And I'm just going to go, all right, well, here we are. Like, this is a good opportunity for my kid to learn how to get out of mud, because what if he got stuck in the mud when I wasn't here in the car with him, right? You know, this is what we're talking about here. This is the nuance of surrender. And he says, if you're not careful, not only will your psychological form, like your mind, will get in trouble. Oh, thanks for that, David. It's so fun to see stars. It's like a fun thing. Thanks. I didn't know that those things, like, they turn into... I got an email from Facebook. Oh, you got stars. It was like, it was money. So thank you, David. It was a nice surprise to me. All right, back to this. He says, if you're not careful, your physical form will also become rigid. If you are always resisting what's now, which we do in our minds all the time, because again, that's how the ego gets its life. If we're always resisting what's now, he said it literally will start to come into the physical body. Tensions will start to arise in different parts of the body, and your whole body will contract. And when you're in resistance, you've probably seen it. You can see it in older people. Like, people are just like angry at life and they resist everything. Like, they're really like pent up. And what happens is that that free flow of your life energy through the body, what the yogis would call the prana, right? That life force energy all of a sudden is constricted. It can't flow either. And this is the force that is your digestive force. This is the force that heals your body from wounds. This is the force that keeps you, functioning, keeps your immune system strong. And so if you are constantly in resistance, you're going to set up dis-ease in your system because your life force energy is not going to be able to flow through. It's not going to be able to digest well. If you have digestive problems, we'll figure out, are you in fight or flight a lot? Right? Are you resisting a lot? It could be. I'm not saying that's your situation, but it could be, right? It's sometimes there's very simple answers to fixing the body. And he says, look, body work can help, physical therapy can help at restoring the flow, but unless you practice surrender in your everyday life, that's a temporary relief to a symptom that's root cause is the fact that you're in a resistance pattern. So if you have the root of resisting life, you are going to set up problems in your body that will continue to reoccur. Even if you drink a Cia, right, and you get redox in your system, the best thing that you can get to keep your system strong, keep your life force strong, right, if you're doing that, but you're resisting life and you're angry, like you're going to continue to create problems in your body. You got to understand the mental, emotional impact on the body-mind. Exactly, Jeanette. Stay inquisitive to what can be done next. That is exactly right. All right, so he says, if you find your life situation unsatisfactory or even intolerable, it is only by surrendering first that you can break the unconscious resistance pattern that perpetuates the situation. So step one is surrendering. Step one is going, okay, enough. Like, I need to accept what is. Like, I'm no longer going to resist what is. I'm going to accept it. And then you figure out, what to do. He says surrender is perfectly compatible with taking action. Surrender doesn't mean you're just, all right, it is what it is, I do nothing. It's going, okay, I'm going to let go of my inner resistance to it, all right? But I can still try to achieve a goal. I can still try to move forward, all right? It's a totally different energy, though. What he starts to describe here, I'm on page 173 for those of you in the book. What he starts to describe is that you'll get into a different quality because the flow of energy that comes to you when you surrender is the flow of the divine. It's that intention, as Wayne Dyer calls it, right? It's source, it's consciousness, it's the quantum field, whatever word you want to give it, that's what you're accessing. When you surrender, all of a sudden you open yourself up to become a channel where you can channel that. And that's going to navigate you through. And a lot of times, he says that life just starts to unfold beautifully. And when you're in non-resistance, the quality of your consciousness, meaning the quality of whatever you're doing, is enhanced. And he says, as more humans awaken, I loved this. I starred this and underlined it and went, wow, what? So he says, and I'm curious what you guys would call this. He says, as more humans awaken to this, the word work is going to disappear from our vocabulary. What? And he said, perhaps a new word will be created to replace it. Like, so just think for a minute. If he's saying that, okay, if I just let go, if I accept what is, and I'm in this flow with the divine, and everything starts unfolding for me, nothing's going to feel like work. Work is not a thing anymore, because work, typically when we think of work, it's hard, it's arduous, it's like going and we're combating and all this stuff. And he says, no, when you realize that you can get rid of the resistance within, and you open up to the flow of the quantum field and the infinite, all of a sudden, things will become effortless. Things will just unfold. You will be in the flow of life. That's what he's talking about. Like, what would the word be instead of work? I'm curious. Did you guys, did any of you else, others of you stop here? Because I went, okay, well, if it's not work, what is it? And the words I was thinking, I'm curious if you have any, but the words I was thinking was, instead it will feel like flow, like it will feel like ease. It will be an unfolding, right? It's just like, it's like a river, right? It's just like, it's going. I would be curious if any of you thought of other words, or it might have just been me that stopped at this point and was like, whoa, that's a world I want to live in, for sure. So the next thing was a question that somebody asked, and they said, I still can't quite see where the energy or motivation for taking action and bringing about change would come from if there's a certain amount of dissatisfaction. So he's saying, well, if I just accept what is, then I'm never going to be dissatisfied enough to do anything, right? To change anything. And what Eckhart Tolle says is, no, in the state of surrender, you will see very clearly what needs to be done, and you can take action. And you do one thing at a time, focusing on one thing at a time and very deliberately moving forward one thing at a time. He says, learn from nature, right? Nature, everything gets accomplished. And you can see how the miracle of life just unfolds without dissatisfaction, without unhappiness. It's not needed. It's not a prerequisite. All right. He says, this is why Jesus said, look at the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Like, what does nature teach you? I go on walks in nature all the time, every day. And I'm constantly looking because it's a constant teacher, because nature is still in flow. Nature doesn't have the ego mind. Nature doesn't have, this thing pulling itself out of flow. Like we get pulled out of flow as human beings. Nature doesn't. Nature's just in it. Watch your pets. They're just in it. And so if you want to understand, well, how can anything happen if there's no, unhappiness? It's like, well, nature unfolds without any unhappiness. And look how beautiful it is. Jeanette is saying she was thinking the same thing. What would the word be? Flow for sure. Yeah. Angela says life, right? It would just be life. Yeah, exactly. An effortless flow. That's just life, right? We would just be in life or just be living. And everything would just be unfolding. So I encourage you guys to go out in nature more. Assignment for the week, right? Spend some time in nature. See what nature can teach you. See if you see this in nature. How just the energy flow is just there. Nothing's unhappy. The tree's not unhappy. Like I'm looking at a tree right now. There's a huge tree and another tree that was growing under it. And it can't grow any further because something's there. It's not unhappy with the situation. It just went, okay, I'm going to lean this way. And so its trunk is now going this way and it's going out towards the light. It's not unhappy. It's just taking action from what is, right? Like, this is what we're talking about. This is what we can do. Oh, that tree shouldn't be there. Blah, 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 blah. That's what humans would do. Let me cut it down. Let me see if I can get it out of its way. Let me negotiate with it. Blah, blah, blah. Let me see if I can pay it money. No, it's just there. Move that way, right? That's all it is. All it is. That's what we're talking about here. Don't resist what is. You will drive yourself crazy. Okay. Now, he says, well, what about a situation, right? What does it look like in a situation? So there's a situation you've identified and you say, okay, I don't like this situation. So what do? Now that you've accepted it, now you ask yourself, is there anything I can do to change the situation? Is there anything I can do to improve the situation or remove myself from the situation? This is what you do. So once you realize, okay, I've been resisting this situation. I don't want to resist anymore. There's a lot of conflict in me. I'm going to just accept it. Accept doesn't mean like, I'm okay with it. I condone it. It just means, all right, my inner resistance is gone. I can have inner peace. Now, can I change it? Can I improve it? Or can I just remove myself? What do I do? These are the questions you ask. This is how now you navigate through. And he says, if so, take appropriate action. Focus on the one thing that you can do now. And maybe only the thing you can do is plan. And plan for the future. And plan how you're going to act in the next meeting or the next whatever. All right? He says, make sure you don't start running some mental movie and projecting yourself into the future and losing the now. Any action you take may not bear fruit immediately. And until it does, don't resist what is. Just figure out, how can I act? How could I remove myself? What can I do? And start acting. Exactly, Kevin. Kevin just said in Star Wars, Darth Vader says to Luke, resistance is futile. It is. Resistance is futile. It's not going to get you anywhere. All right. He says, of course, do not confuse surrender with the attitude of, I can't be bothered anymore, or I just don't care anymore, right? That's an attitude tainted with negativity. That's an attitude tainted with the ego. That is not surrender. That will not open you to the infinite. Okay? That's just the ego still. So how do you actually surrender? Like a lot of people, okay, fine. I get the concept. I get what you're saying, but I don't conceptually, but how do I actually do it? How do I actually surrender? Here's what he says. Number one, acknowledge there is resistance. If you can acknowledge that you're resisting, all of a sudden you're not just in it, you're going, oh, look, I'm resisting. That's what's here right now. So you've created space, number one. Then just start to observe how your mind created it, right? How it labels the situation, how it's labeling yourself, how it's labeling others. You look at it as if it's a thing, all right? My resistance is a thing. It's over here. And so you just start going, isn't that interesting? It's got a lot to say about so-and-so. It's not being very nice to me, right? It's got a lot of opinions. And then feel the energy of the emotion, right? When the thoughts start going, emotion arises in the body. Bring awareness to it. That's what he's saying. He said, pay attention, be the witness. See what is there. Be the sky, looking at the weather that's in the sky. And he says, by focusing all of your attention into the here and now, because you're observing, because you're the witness, that unconscious resistance is all of a sudden made conscious. And that's the end of it. It's like shining a light into a dark room. Literally, all you have to do is bring awareness to it, and that in and of itself dissolves it. It is that simple. But the mind is really going to get into its chatter about, well, it shouldn't be this way, this isn't there, this blah, 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 blah. I was talking with Kevin. I'm just remembering this because we were talking about, we're both part of a organization called ASEA, and they have a testimonial Facebook page with there was over 200,000 people in there, close to 250,000. And it got compromised. Hackers came in and took it over. And there's just no way to get it back. Okay. And we were laughing because she said, Danielle, I saw you just accept and move forward. Okay, great. This is what we're going to do now. And Kevin, I hope this is okay. And maybe some of you, because there's others of you in this group, saw the chatter of well, this shouldn't be. And this isn't fair. And how dare they? And there needs to be some sort of consequence, right? This resistance to the fact that, someone compromised an incredible part of our business and was doing things that are totally not okay and that nobody condones and no one thinks is all right. But it's the reality is resisting that fact, they hacked the group. Hackers arrived, right? We have to just accept it. And then it's, well, where do we go from here, right? With no resistance from within, just, okay, I don't condone it. I don't think it's okay what they did, but I also am going to give it no energy. No energy. Just, all right, well, what can we do from here? Move on. Boom, we're over here, right? And so there's a lot of inner peace then. So just something to consider with how to do this. He says you can't be conscious and unhappy at the same time, right? Consciousness and negativity cannot coexist, all right? So, you want to just make sure that you're able to let it go. Yeah, Kevin says, I got so annoyed that they hacked it. Yeah, and that was it was resistance. That was such a perfect example of, well, you're resisting what is, right? And it seems so natural because it's justifiable, because it is correct that it wasn't okay, right? And that there is no consequence and there's really nothing you can do. And so it's well, what in the heck? This isn't right. This shouldn't be this way. All of that might be correct. But when that chatter's going, it's getting you riled up. It's getting you into your fight or flight response. It's your sympathetic nervous system that's going crazy. It's your body that's getting stressed, right? They're fine. They're over there sharing recipes and trying to get you to buy their stuff. Whatever. They're fine and you're ticked off. Where's the problem there? The problem's within. The problem is the fact that you're resisting. You just have to go, okay, this is what it is. Now, what can I do? Is there anything that I can do? Can I notify Facebook? Can I take actions? Yeah, you can, but from a non-reactive place, so your body's calm. Anyway, just an example that's relevant to many. Listening to this, I think it can make sense because it's easy to conceptually understand surrender. It's a different ball game when you're having to surrender to something that you believe is not okay and is wrong. Because this situation is not okay and also wrong. But who's to say? Maybe now we're getting a new group and the new group's going to be even better. Right? So it's all right, cool. Life is flowing us. We're in the flow. Just be with it. Just absolutely be with it. All right. A lot of people say, well, my concern is that I'm going to get taken advantage of. I can't just be okay. I'm afraid that I'm going to get taken advantage of. And this is what he says, and I think this is so key, so absolutely key. He says, all right, so what about people who want to use me, manipulate me, or control me? What am I supposed to do with them? Am I supposed to surrender to them? And what Eckhart Tolle says is they are cut off from being. They are unconsciously attempting to get energy and power from you. It's true that only an unconscious person will try to use or manipulate others, but it's equally true that only an unconscious person can be used and manipulated. So watch yourself, right? You cannot control if somebody else is unconscious and doing manipulative stuff, but you can control you. He says, if you resist or fight unconscious behavior in others, you become unconscious yourself. If you start to resist others, you are becoming unconscious yourself. This is huge. But surrender doesn't mean that you allow yourself to be used by unconscious people. Not at all. It's perfectly possible for you to say no firmly and clearly to a person or to walk away from a situation and be at a state of complete inner non-resistance at the same time. When you say no to a person or an individual, let it come from, not from reaction, but from insight, right? Don't get angry like, how dare you take advantage of me? How dare you try to do this? No, no, no. You just, oh, interesting. Look at their behavior. Like they're just not aware. No, thank you. And move on, right? You don't have to write them. You don't need to wake them up. You don't, nothing, nothing. It's not for you. All right. So just let it come from that space. And there's a higher quality to it. And he says, through true surrender, spiritual energy comes into this world. All right. And this is how we can all impact this planet. And he says, planet Earth will exist and survive if the energy of the inhabitants switch. And right now, the trajectory is not looking great, right? More people need to awaken to this. He says, through true surrender, spiritual energy comes into the world. It creates no suffering for yourself, for others, or for life on the planet. Unlike mind energy that pollutes the earth and is not subject to the law of polarity, which dictates that nothing can exist without its opposite, that there can be no good without bad. I really liked this. This was page 176. What he was saying was, look, in this world of the mind, there's good and bad. And when we're resisting these things, we're creating duality, and we're in the ego mind, and we're creating more problems, right? Jeanette's talking about the issues over in Israel. Yeah, like there is just conflict. So what he's saying is that when you surrender to what is, these things come into a harmony where you don't see good and bad, you just see the whole. You come into this space. I wish there was no color on this side, but you come into this space where it's just one. When we're in the world of the mind, it's dual. When we come together and we surrender to what is, we're just accepting the whole. And he says this is the energy that this planet can have. All right, if more and more people just realize, well, just by accepting this, I'm shifting myself and I'm shifting the planet. All right, absolutely. This is huge. Like that's unity, and that's everything. So there was so much goodness in this book. Oh my goodness. We got 2 minutes left. So the last thing I'll say is he talked about practical advice. So let's do 2 pieces of practical advice. Number 1, let's say you're at a situation at work. I know some of you are, that you're not happy with. It's unpleasant, okay? And you're like, I've tried to surrender to it, but it's impossible. Like, I just can't surrender to it. Here's what he says. If you cannot surrender, take action immediately. Speak up or do something to bring about a change in the situation or remove yourself from it. Period. End of sentence. If you can't surrender to it, you must immediately take action or immediately remove yourself. Take responsibility for your own life. Do not pollute your beautiful, radiant inner being, nor the earth as a whole, with negativity. Do not give unhappiness in any way, in any form whatsoever, a dwelling place inside of you. If it's not working, move, right? What do they say? You're not a tree. You're not rooted down. You can shift. You can change. You have the ability to move, right? That tree I was talking about earlier, it's not going to get to its full potential, right? Because it's having to go that way because there's another tree here. If that tree were a human being, it could just say, great, I'm not going to get mad that you're here. I'm just going to move. I'm going to remove myself from the situation. You have that ability. The tree does not, but you do. So that's number 1. Number 2, he said in relationships. Basically, he says, watch yourself. Because if you start to get into an argument, you're very likely, right, resisting what is. You're resisting the other person. I thought this was fascinating. He says, if you can never accept what is, By implication, you will not be able to accept anybody the way they are. You will judge, you will criticize, you will label, you will reject, or you will attempt to change people. Furthermore, if you continuously make the now into a means to an end to the future, you will also make every person you encounter or relate with into a means to an end. And the relationship, the human being, is then of secondary importance to you. And that is not the way to live. There's a beautiful book. I talk about having a heart at war or a heart at peace, right? Seeing people as objects or seeing them as a means to an end. Eckhart Tolle right now is saying you're seeing someone as a means to an end, so you're not seeing the human being. You need to see the being in front of you, right? And you need to recognize when you get into an argument, he says, start to observe how defensive you become. Start to observe the force of aggression within you. Start to see how attached you are to your opinions, your vision, because the ego gets its sense of self from that. So you attach yourself with it in a massive way. And he says, feel that mental, emotional energy that is driving you, your need to be right and to make the other person wrong. That's the energy of the ego mind. That's the energy that's making this world toxic and you toxic. And he says what you need to do is then one day realize in an argument that you have a choice and you can surrender, and not the, okay, like, I'm just going to put this away because I'm better than you and I can see the bigger picture. Not that. That's ego. He's saying just literally replace resistance with just letting it go and just observing how when you let it go, when two minds are like this, you're never going to accomplish anything. But the moment you surrender and you just go, all right, I'm just going to accept them for having this opinion, they have nothing to butt up against anymore. And they will also be forced to surrender as well. And then, that's when he says, and then once identification with these two positions, once both of you have opened, all of a sudden true communication can actually happen. When your heart is open, right? When you have surrendered and you have an open heart, communication can actually happen. We're going so far over. All right, last bullet, because I thought this was amazing. All right, he says, bottom line, the ego believes that in your resistance lies your strength. Whereas in truth, resistance cuts you off from being and the only place of your real true power. Resistance is weakness. It is fear masquerading as strength. What the ego sees as the weakness of your being in its purity and innocence and power is actually your true strength. Right? When you surrender, when you connect in with that infinite, that's your real strength, when you can deliver from there. And he says, until there is surrender, unconscious role-playing constitutes a large part of human interaction. But in surrender, you no longer need the ego. You don't need its defenses. You don't need its false mask. You become very simple and very real. And the ego thinks that's dangerous. The ego thinks you'll get hurt. The ego thinks you'll become vulnerable. The ego doesn't know, guys. The ego has no idea that it's cutting off access to the one thing that is bigger than it. All right? It thinks this vulnerable state is no good, but he says what he's saying is only through letting go of resistance, through becoming vulnerable, can you discover your true and essential invulnerability, that you're connected. So good. I don't want this book to be over. So good. So we got the rest of this chapter, page 180 to what? 191 will bring us to a close. So next week, next Monday, this is what we're finishing out. If you're new to book club, all of these are on my Facebook, on my Instagram. They're on my YouTube channel on a playlist, probably the easiest place if you want to go back through the whole book. It's called The Power of Now. If you got value from this, please make sure you share it. Tag somebody that needs to hear this. Share it to your wall, right? When we collectively as a human consciousness shift, one by one, we shift the world. And that's how we're able to actually get world peace, right? And that's what I'm after. We just need to keep turning on our inner lights. So thank you guys, as always, for being here. I feel like today wasn't the most interactive. I was like reading the whole thing. Sorry, it just was so good. I just thought, oh my God. What he had to say was everything. Thank you, Charlotte, for your time. And thank you, Jeanette. Yes, it's never over. It's a good discussion. Happy Thanksgiving to those of you in the U.S. And enjoy your week. Lots of love to all of you, and I'll talk to you soon.